As you can see here, through the normal left-hand side, you'll have all your different applications. I think the key thing to note is we're not trying to change the way people work. We want them to leverage Teams for what it was designed for. We want them to leverage their chat functionality, have the one-on-one chat. We want them to access their teams like they normally would, to collaborate with one another and share information. If calls are enabled, allow them to make voice and phone calls itself. So typically we know if we want to go through the process of creating a new team, we would go through the join now and create a team and follow the prompts there. I suppose going through this process, it doesn't capture much metadata or templates applied to that team. So through the left-hand navigation, we can navigate through the TELUS application. So the first thing you'll notice as part of TELUS is the TELUS dashboard. The TELUS dashboard will showcase a number of different features about that team, about the teams. The first thing you'll notice is you'll be able to toggle between My Workspaces and Public Workspaces. It's a nice, easy and quick way to see the workspaces that you are a part of, and also the public workspaces you have access to by clicking through the thing. You can also see as part of the dashboard, you'll see each team has a number of bits of metadata associated with that team, giving you insight into what that team is. If we go back to the Teams tab, you'll see those teams still exist here. However, you don't get the metadata associated with it. So you don't get the insight into what that team is out of the box. Heading back to the TELUS app, there are a number of different ways you can search for the team. You still can search for the team here via the search bar. So if I type in My, you'll bring up the My benefits. Or if I type in Create, it'll bring up the Create. So you can see there's a number of different ways to search the team. Each team, as I touched on, has a number of different pieces of metadata associated with it. So which department does it belong to? Who is the owner or the executive sponsor of this team itself? What is the status? Is this team active, inactive, archived, deleted? What is the team type? So this is a template, which I'll touch on in a little bit. What is that template associated with it? And what is the classification of that team as well? Is it public, confidential, general, highly confidential, as you can see? So a number of different bits of metadata that you can see associated with each team, which you don't normally get out of the box. Creating a new team is simple. You'll follow the tab here to hit the new button. The key thing to note here is when you click on create a new team is we're taking you through a wizard-style approach, asking you questions about why you want a team, as opposed to technical questions behind it. So what is the purpose of your workspace? In here, we have 4 different templates that we can choose from. A team template, a project template, a community template, and an ideation template. These templates are designed to meet most of your organization's collaboration requirements. These templates will also have different associated services that will be provisioned in the background automatically by selecting them. Let's go through the process of creating a project template. From here, you can access the workspace classification itself. So the workspace classification is essentially applying classification to that team and then the associated data associated with it as well. So by applying this workspace classification, you'll start leveraging your Office 365 sensitivity labels that will ultimately apply rules to each individual space. For example, if you created a highly confidential team for your leadership team on a new project that they're working on, this highly confidential private team will ultimately have rules that will automatically be applied, such as not being able to download content from that team, not being able to share content externally, applying different retention and backup policies to those things. So leveraging what you have out of the box or through other solutions as well as part of this workspace classification. Once you apply classification to each team, what we'll do is we'll use general for now. You'll be able to access the metadata that is required. So more information about the workspace itself. This information will then be shown in the dashboard. So in this instance, I will I'll create a team. And then the description is the team. There we go. Who is the business unit? So who does this team belong to? This team will belong to marketing and media. The business owner is the sponsor of the team as well. By default, if you don't add a business owner, that will then filter out as the owner of the team. But for this instance, we'll leave it as that. I'll add in Jenny as a required person, and we'll also add in Peter. And then create workspace. So from there, you'll start going through provisioning the associated services with each individual template. That will be the tabs, the channels, the classifications, the folder structure, anything around Planner, potentially around your shared OneNote. Start provisioning all of the different services in the background. What I'll do is it'll take a couple of minutes to provision. There we go. As you can see, it's provisioning. I've added to a team as being an owner. It is almost there. And it is done. So if I look back at the dashboard, that team will now be created. If I then go to the Teams tab, that team will now then be created with the associated assets. It'll take a while for all the services to get created. It's just how long it takes. But in the meantime, I'll show you an existing channel and a workspace. So this workspace here, Teams Rollout, is a project template. As you can see here, as part of the project template, you will have all the associated tabs created. You'll have the Files tab created for sharing content within the team chat. You'll have a SharePoint list created as your stakeholders. So as a project, who is the key stakeholders and how do we contact them? You'll have a shared calendar. Really important for a project to have a shared calendar to make sure you understand when daily stand-ups are or deliverables or timelines. You have your quick links associated. Anything related to the project is going to be really easy and it needs to be really accessible for the team members. Your document management structure, really important to have a consistent document management structure of how we store project documents in this instance. Here, this is an example of the folder structure that we use. Typically, most projects will go through 4 phases: planning, design, build, and go live. This is exactly how providing that governance around document management. We'll also provision a notebook in OneNote, allowing you to share notes quickly and easily between required team members. And the last one is around a planner. So provisioning a planner board, allowing us to keep tracks of tasks, which is really important for projects. You'll notice here as well on the left-hand side, you'll also provision different channels for different elements of the team. So here, as part of a project, typically we'll have a issues register, allowing us to chat about specific issues that are coming up within that team. Again, provisioning different services and different requirements for each individual channel. So the issues again has the issues register from before, and also the project documents library as well. You'll have a meeting section, a place for us to have weekly meetings and a record for us to capture all of the information required around a meeting specific to this project. And lastly, the risks as well. So as you can see here, this is how the template is created in the background. We'll jump back to Telus now to start talking about the management of teams and the ongoing life cycle. So as you can see here, each team has that metadata we talked about. You'll see a little bit of options around here through the ellipsis, but essentially here we get to start seeing some status. So the status here will allow us to see if that team is inactive. An inactive status means that there's been no activity within a team and the associated services for 30 days. So that will automatically drive to inactive. From there, it gives us a nice dashboard of all the inactive teams, allowing us to send notifications to Peter. Hey, Peter, this team here asked payroll. Is it still relevant? No one has used this team in the last 30 days. Is this something we can go through for recertification? Allowing us to then stop the duplication of teams if we know they're inactive. From there, we can start driving the lifecycle management. We can either edit, archive, or delete that team. By having this metadata here, we're also able to leverage any workflow solution over the top to start driving this process as an automated feature too. Perfect. So that is the provisioning aspect of TELUS. If we go and think back to the ask component, challenges 6 and 7, finding the right information when necessary, and also the change management adoption. This is where another solution of ours, as part of TELUS, the ask solution comes into play. So there's two key scenarios in where the ask solution will work. The ask solution will be deployed again like a tab as an application on the left-hand side. There will be, so scenario 1 is when you want to have a one-to-one conversation with the ask bot. This is a place where it's a bit more personal and a question that you want to ask that doesn't necessarily need to be shared with everyone else. The other scenario is in a team environment where, if we look at this one, for example, from an Ask IT perspective, this is where you want to ask a question that everyone can see, but also you want others to promote and also provide insight and feedback, ultimately providing better answers. So the purpose of the Ask bot is essentially to build a dynamic knowledge base and also then answer questions back based on those questions. So finding the right information, going back to how do we find the right information based on what we're trying to find. So me as a user, I might go to the Ask IT team and ask a question specific to IT. So I can tag the bot and ask bot, how do I add a printer? By asking the question, the bot will search its knowledge base in the background and ultimately provide me an answer if it knows the answer. There are a couple of different scenarios in which it will respond to if it doesn't know the answer, but we'll touch on that in a little bit. As you can see here, the Ask bot knows the answer here and tells me and gives me a brief description of how to do that. It also gives me a confidence score rating. So this confidence score rating is a combination of all the feedback that we receive from everyone that has asked a question over a period of time. If I tag this is helpful, this will then go back and let the bot know that this is the right answer, ultimately improving the confidence score over time. If you believe it is not the correct answer, you're able to go and hit tag expert. Let's try another question. Which one is that? I make a new Teams meeting. To this instance, I'm asking the Ask bot, as a user, how do I make a new Teams meeting or create a new Teams meeting? This comes back to the adoption side of things, allowing a user to then ask a question, pointing us to the direction of where things need to live. So you can see here, it thinks it knows the question, it's answered it back, but we look at it, and once we read it, we realize it actually isn't the right question. It isn't the right answer. So in this instance, what we'll do is we'll go and tag an expert to let us know that we believe this is the wrong answer. So what it does is it tags the owners of the team, myself being an owner, but also Jenny as well. Me, Aaron, as an owner, I can go and then answer that question. Once I know what the question is, I can just reply. This is one I prepared earlier. And I'll hit save. I can then go and train the bot to learn that question. There we go. So it is now saving that question, and there you go. That answer will now be updated. It does take a little bit of time. I think every 5 minutes it's set to refresh and learn it. So once that comes back, we'll be able to ask that question again. So that is the Ask solution itself. So what I might do is I'll go back and I'll continue on, and I'll come back and ask this question in a couple of minutes to see how it's learned the question. So the last thing around the TELUS solution is the analytics piece. So how do we start gaining actual insights into how our teams are creating and collaborating with one another? So here is a dashboard that we've created, the Power BI dashboard. You can see here a summary of all the questions and answers. So here you can see over the last handful of weeks, there have been 200 questions asked within the teams. The bot or the Ask solution has answered 29 of them. 24 of these answers have been helpful. 66 of these answers have been answered by an expert, so requiring an expert to actually answer these questions. However, probably the more alarming stat is around 105 of these questions have been unanswered. So what is the reason behind these questions being unanswered? Is this something that we need to provide additional training on to our SMEs or to our owners on how to potentially answer these questions better? So you can start seeing here, we start getting insights into how we are managing questions and answers. You can see here over time, you'll see the bot here, number of confidence over time. So over the course of the time, you'll see that there is more helpful than there is the bot answering the questions. You can also see here the outcomes over time. So when a question is asked, does it go unanswered or does it go answered as helpful? So you can see here, as we start, the questions being answered, they go unknown, they get answered. There's probably a little bit of a spike here of unanswered questions, probably from a testing to show the number, but you can see here then as we get towards here, this is exactly where the answers are starting to be helpful. So think about this over a course of a period of 12 months as the bot learns and as we teach it more and as people interact and drive more from the bot, you'll start seeing more consistent answers throughout its responses. You also get some insight into the teams as well. So you can look at the Ask IT team. Within here, you see Aaron has been the most active, asking 26 different questions and answers. Cameron has also been active here as well as Damien, Johnny and Jason. You'll also get to see a little bit more around the types of questions that are being answered for each individual team. Again, providing us insight into the types of questions that we're seeing within our organisation, almost giving us a pulse of what we need to make smarter decisions on. Those answers and question pairs feed back into our knowledge base. So you can see here, these are the types of questions that have been answered over time. So when the question happened, the time, the answer status, did it go answered? Did it go unanswered? Who was it answered by? Was it answered by the Ask bot or was it answered by SME such as Aaron here? So providing this insight into us allows us to start making better decisions on how we then potentially drive that change management within an organization. We might understand that, do you know what? We have a lot of people asking us, how do we make Teams calls? Or how do we make set up Teams meetings? This might be something that we decide to run more of a formal training session for everyone, enabling us to understand how we actually better drive Teams meetings. Or do we record a video, publish it on stream, allowing a user to then ask the question and point it to that video? The beauty of Stream now is that everything is transcribed, allowing the bot to understand the transcript of the thing, delivering them to a timestamp. Let's go back to the Ask section here and ask this question one more time. It should know the answer. Here you go. Click on the calendar app on the left-hand side view, and it also gives me a link that I've added to, which will take me to some training material here that I've added. As you can see, it's a nice, easy way for us to drive change management, adoption, and training. But think about the use cases we can drive here. There's a number of different use cases we could drive from this solution. We've seen organizations leverage it for an Ask HR or an adoption bot, or potentially a service request ticket. If I, as a user, wanted to type, my camera is broken, how do I actually submit a service request ticket? The bot has the ability then to capture that information via a form and ultimately, if required, integrate with that service desk ticket, this ticketing system, filling in the form, generating a ticket and feeding that information back to a user. So we can start seeing the power of how the bot can help automate a lot of different workflow processes through the Teams interface, ultimately driving us to leverage Teams better.